Circa.com.
Yeah, holy smokes, I'm no joke out the bullpen. Bringing nothing but heat, leave you hanging like clothespins. He's a beast when he goes in, ice cold frozen. The first round draft pick, number one chosen. Drop bombs, explosion, self-promotion. And I keep shit moving like a flanker in motion. I'm the number one spokesman, it's my devotion. That I'm dedicated to the rhyme is my own notion. Brown water's the potion, it put hair on your chest. Or you can put one in the air and it'll put you to rest. Sweet dreams, I'm about to fade. I got my mind on my money and I'm dreaming about getting this all paid. Mr. Go-Getter, Mr. Assertive, Mr. Initiative, Mr. Results, man, I'm all about my business, kid. Damn.
On a suddenly not so casual NFL Week 4 Sunday, it is October 1st, 2023. It is Circa Millions, the show, the Shark and the Gun, live on Sharky Waters Nation X and a brand new YouTube channel. Come on over to YouTube and chat with us. Fire up the chat. A beautiful Sunday morning. It is Guns Picks. What's going on this morning, my brother?
Man, had myself a college football day. I'm ready to carry that momentum over into the NFL. Listen, we gave you Detroit on Thursday night, and it was an easy win. We're going to continue to dominate the board, cash tickets, and give you guys the sharpest information on the planet. I am ready for Week 4 NFL, baby. Let's go.
A suddenly not so casual one developing here in the now. First play, Orchard Park, New York. Buffalo Bills at home. Fourth matchup in the last 14 months against a scorching hot Miami Dolphins team. Buffalo, buy low, maybe not, maybe yes. Guns Picks. A conversation to be had and the first official of the broadcast.
Yeah, usually when a team scores, 70 points, because that always happens often, you normally want to fade the team the next week, and I'm going to do it here with Buffalo. I think it's a perfect spot to take the Buffalo Bills on this one. Listen, we know where Miami came from. Boat race, Denver, 70-20 last week as 6.5-point home favorites, put up 726 yards of total offense, plus 363 net yard average. I mean, McDaniel just putting out mad numbers there with the Dolphins. Now you're looking at Buffalo coming off another dominating win themselves. They went to Washington, beat them up on the road as 5.5-point favorites. Washington's offense was held to 88 yards of total offense in that game. They had a plus 156 net yard average for the game. So what I want to tell people is the public perception of Miami is their offense is extremely good and unstoppable statistically. I would say, yes, accurate. But when you actually look at who they played, we'll get to that in a second. You look at them yards per play. They're number one in the NFL, 8.4 yards per play. Number one in passing yards per attempt, 10.6 yards per attempt. Number one in rushing, 6.1 yards per carry. But the reality is 2 out of those 3 opponents they face very, very weak defenses, right? So they faced the Chargers in week 1. Chargers are ranked 31st in yards per play. They're ranked 21st in rushing yards per attempt and 30th in passing yards per attempt on the defensive side. Then they face Denver. They're dead last in yards per play, 31st against the rush and 32nd in the league against the pass. So what I'm telling you, granted, a lot of these stats are a little bit inflated because they did play Miami, but these are not like ball busting, rock fight type of defenses that you want to see in the NFL. The one opponent that I didn't mention was the New England Patriots. When the New England Patriots played them, they only lost 24-7 at home. Miami did have a plus 101 net yard average with a plus 1 turnover ratio, but New England held them to 389 of total offense, 244 passing, and 1 sack. New England's defense held Miami to only 242. Actually held them 242 yards below their offensive season average. So what you say? So inside the division, AFC East might be a great spot here to be taking Buffalo. Now, Buffalo, they have a great defense. They holding their opponents to 253 yards per game of total offense, but 5.9 yards per carry on the rush, but 142 yards passing, and they have an egregious sack rate, 16% sack rate on the defensive side. So they get to the quarterback and they put pressure on him, and they get the sacks. Now you got to look at Buffalo's defense. They're ranked 18th in yards per play, 32nd in rushing yards per attempt, 10th in passing yards per attempt. But with Miami, you got to look at the matchup on this one, right? These two teams met each other 3 times last season, 2 divisional games and a playoff game. Miami won the first one at Miami 21-19 as Buffalo is a 4.5-point road favorite. Buffalo did win the next one in a revenge spot, 32-29, and they won the playoff game 34-31. Buffalo 8-1 straight up in the last 9 meetings when it comes to playing Miami. And then you have Buffalo's just basically own them in the yardage battle as well, winning the yardage battle in the last 7 games on an average of plus 117 net yard average. So Buffalo is still the team to beat in the AFC East, in my opinion. It ain't Miami's throne. And I'm not sold on who Miami is. I think they're very one-dimensional. I think you can beat them on the defensive side. And really, I don't think they have faced an opponent up to the level that Buffalo brings to the table. So this is why I'm going to be taking Buffalo. Not only is it a Circa play, but I'm also betting on this as a 2-unit special. Give me Buffalo minus 2.5.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, 3 games last year, playoff and regular season, all tight. And I don't really have a specific commentary on that for this reason. The gun obviously giving you guys 3.5 minutes of detailed analysis, an official, and an opportunity to dominate. My first play, I dropped it overnight. A game that I'm excited to talk about. We're back in the LA Rams on the road at Indianapolis. And when I started to look at this last night, I found it to be incredibly interesting that there are 2 games this weekend that are basically a dead out mirror of each other. And they are Pittsburgh at Houston, and they are the Rams at the Colts. Both are road out of division spots for Pittsburgh and the Rams. And both happen to be at the AFC South versus rookie quarterbacks. And this, again, I talk about this all the time. This is not necessarily NFL football. This is the robotic nature of sports and what's going on. So when I look at these 2 matchups, I said to myself, who can you buy and who can you sell? And I want to talk about it. So when you look at Pittsburgh is a sell for multiple reasons. 1, they won the game last week at the Raiders. Also, Raiders are not nearly as good as the matchup the Rams had. If you look at the Rams, you want to buy the Rams. They played at Cincinnati, an 0-2 Cincinnati team that had to win the game and did, and took care of business on that line. Go to the other side of this game. When you look at the opponents, I really think Indianapolis is in a fade spot here. We talk about this every week. You want to figure out teams that are too hot or too cold. Look at Indianapolis. Indianapolis comes in here on a dub 2. 2-0 ATS last 2, but I think very unsustainable and situational. Go back 2 weeks ago, they did catch a road win at Houston. Again, in the division against a rookie quarterback. Not indicative of much. Last week, we said this on the show. The Baltimore Ravens were in the biggest sandwich spot of the entire week, playing an out-of-division Colts team with Gardner Minshew, sandwiched between 2 divisional road games. And guess what? We weren't wrong. We didn't expect Baltimore to lose, but they did outright, which makes Indianapolis an even better fade team today. Coming off of a huge high, they get Anthony Richardson back, which I think is also a fade element. This is where Gardner Minshew covers last week. Now you flip back, and this game has a bit of a trap element to it. Win at Houston, win at Baltimore, out of division game against the Rams, so you basically have no matchup analysis against from a totally different conference and division. Then you get a home game next week against Tennessee and a road game at Jacksonville. Back-to-back divisional games. Again, last week, Rams losing to the Bengals. There's no shame in that. Indianapolis is way too hot in the small window. This is a great spot to buy the Rams at 1 o'clock. First official of the broadcast for myself, Rams plus 1.5. Staying on course with this conversation, as I mentioned, Baltimore Ravens off a brutal loss last week. A game they had absolutely no business losing. It's one thing to not cover the spread in pro football, but to really lose a game outright, which could affect your playoff standing long term, it's just inexcusable. There was a questionable no call in overtime, which I think would have probably given them the win. I had the game on. Refs just not getting it right. But nonetheless, we sit here on this October 1st with a collaboration official. Baltimore Ravens on the road in the division. Guns picks. What's going on here?
Yeah, you said it best. I mean, it feels like it. I mean, if there is a look-ahead spot in the NFL, which there really isn't, I mean, I think your look-ahead spots are usually divisional games, right? So they have a divisional game coming up. and they overlooked their opponent with Indianapolis at home, 7.5-point favorites, and take the L on that one. But talking about what is going on with these two teams right now, you have Cleveland coming off a dominating win versus Tennessee, 27-3, holding Tennessee to 94 yards of total offense, plus 261 net yards for the game. Now, Baltimore, like I said, heartbreaking loss in OT, 22-19. But what a lot of the Baltimore's regression, in my opinion, has to do with the injuries, right? They were down 2 key linemen in that game and some key players in the defensive secondary. All signs I have seen indicate that most of these guys are going to be coming back, so they're going to be as healthy as they've been since week 1. And then also you got to look at Cleveland dominating on the defensive side of the ball, right? Holding their opponents to 164 yards per game of total offense, 2.8 yards per carry on the ground, 48.3% pass completion rate, and a 10.3 sack rate. A little bit misleading, though, if you actually look at the competition so far. So who have they played? They played Cincinnati, right? Ranked last in yards per play, last in yards per attempt in passing, and 25th in rushing. All right? Bad offense. Pittsburgh. Do they have a good offense? 22nd in yards per play, 20th in passing yards per attempt, 29th in rushing yards per attempt. Okay. Then you got Tennessee, another lackluster milquetoast offense, 29th in yards per play, 22nd in rushing yards per attempt, and 22nd in passing yards per attempt. So what I'm telling you is, yeah, everybody says Cleveland's defense is good, but who have they played offensively? Absolutely nobody, in my opinion. Now Cleveland's going to be without Nick Chubb, and you saw the immediate drop off the production of the offense when last game versus Tennessee. They used to get over 5 yards per carry. Now they're getting half that, 2.5 yards per carry. That is a big problem because that is a major source of offensive production for Cleveland. Also, you got to look at Cleveland's offensive line, suspect at best. They give up a 12.7% sack rate to their opponents. Now they're going up against the Baltimore pass rush that is ranked 11th in the league and with an 8% sack rate. Deshaun Watson, I saw it in the chat earlier. Looks like he's listed as out. Another quarterback coming in. Looks like it's going to be DTR. If you remember him from the days at UCLA, has not taken a legitimate start in his career. This is a very tough spot versus a very tough defense in Baltimore. And also Baltimore is 5-1 against the spread and is a away dog. That line is drastically moving right now, so I would buy it now. I think Baltimore's going to win this game outright by at least 7 points. So I'm going to be taking here. I did get it at +3. Circa gave me it at +2.5. It's a 2-unit special for me. I love it. I'm going to take it. Take Baltimore, baby.
Love it, live it, buy it, and dominate it. Collaboration play. Of course, we are on this +3 midweek. I did post that for a reason. I did speculate it was going to come the other direction. And look where we are here on this beautiful Sunday morning. Deshaun Watson is not playing today, which I think comes as a surprise to some because obviously last week looked relatively effective in that blowout win against the Titans. But as Guns mentioned, DTR, I think the average person on the street would not know what that means.
Dorian Thompson Robinson.
Chip Kelly's guy coming from UCLA. Right. But again, as Guns mentioned, he's never really played any sort of professional ball in the NFL. So this is going to be a learning curve real fast against an elite defense, a divisional game, and as we mentioned before, a Baltimore team that laid an absolute egg last week. Take it even one step further. This is the spot you want to buy Baltimore in a divisional revenge game. And speaking of quarterback reversals, the last time these teams played last year in Cleveland, Lamar Jackson did not play. It was Tyler Huntley, and Cleveland did take care of business 13-3. So this is the polar opposite. Now Baltimore has the starter, and Cleveland has the backup. Guns wanted to make a comment.
I thought about it for a second because in my mind I thought Huntley played for UCLA too, but I had to stop myself and go, no, he played for Utah. So that's why I was like, I was seeing a little bit of a coincidence that, two guys from the same school, but I had to stop myself and go, wait. Oh, that's all I was trying to do. That's all.
No, it is interesting. I mean, both Pac-12, which I think is interesting in and of
Correct.
itself.
There you go.
There's always some sort of connection in this world. I swear, it's wild. And we were talking about the reversal, the law of averages, the synchronicities, whatever you want to call it. But it is bizarre that the last time these teams played, the Ravens had a backup quarterback from the Pac-12, and now Cleveland is playing a backup quarterback from the Pac-12. But as I mentioned, trap loss last week, but I think you can really correlate this even more specifically to the game the Ravens played on the road in week 2 at Cincinnati. 27-24 win on a +3. And the crucial point there was that was also a revenge game off a loss late last season with Tyler Huntley in the mix. And as I mentioned, 13-3 loss last year in Cleveland. Line functionality is telling you a strong story here for Baltimore. In that particular game, a 10-point loss. Cleveland was -3 at the opening line. You win by 10. This did open at -1.5. It is short, and now it's moving heavily to the Ravens. I'm seeing -2 pop up here now. This could get to 3 by kick. Buy this now, guys, and let's dominate. Next play. Speaking of these out-of-division back-to-backs for the Rams and Pittsburgh, I detailed before why you want to buy the Rams, and now Guns is going to tell you why you want to fade the Steelers.
Listen, I've already kind of mentioned a little bit about who this Pittsburgh is in one of my breakdowns already, talking about some of these games, but I love Houston in this one. I did get it at +3. I think the line's going to be dipping on this one, so just buy it now. I really think Houston's going to win this game. Listen, Pittsburgh coming off a primetime win versus the Las Vegas Raiders 23-18, losing the net yard battle, which is expected with a bad offense, -29 net yards. Now, Houston, they're coming off a outright divisional road win versus Jacksonville, which I picked for you guys last week as 7.5-point dogs. They won the game outright, -38 net yards for the game, but they had a +2 turnover ratio, which was the deciding factor in that contest. Now, you got to look at Houston's offense. They've improved week to week. They're putting about 337 passing yards versus Indianapolis. They put 280 last week versus Jacksonville. CJ Stroud has a 64.5% pass completion rate, 7.5 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, and 0 INTs. He's playing like a veteran, not a rookie. Now you're going to look at Pittsburgh's offense. Just absolutely struggled despite being 2-1 this year. Their only loss this season was to San Francisco and arguably the best team in the NFL, right? They put up 276 yards of total offense so far this season. That is ranked 27th in the NFL. They put up 66.6 yards per attempt in the passing game. That is ranked 20th in the NFL. They put up 3.2 yards per carry in the running game. That is ranked 29th in the NFL. And 59.6 pass completion rate. That is ranked 26th in the NFL. They also average -111 net yards for the season. This is not a good team at all. They are getting away with murder in these wins. Now, the perception, everybody says, right? Oh, Pittsburgh has a good defense, right? Let's take a step back and look at the numbers on this one. Pittsburgh, they give up 5.4 yards per play to their opponents. That's ranked 21st in the NFL. They give up 5.2 yards per carry in the rushing game. That is ranked 29th in the NFL. Pittsburgh gives up 6.6 yards per attempt to their opponents in the passing game. That is ranked 20th in the NFL. And they give up 23.3 points per game to their opponents. That's ranked 19th in the NFL. So when people say that Pittsburgh has this great defense, it's because of the turnovers. They're great on the turnover ratio. They're getting lucky on these pick sixes and fumbles and getting touchdowns this way. These are outliers when you look at capping, okay? So in comparison to the Houston defense, Houston has better numbers than the Pittsburgh defense. So people are just overinflating the value of the Pittsburgh defense way too high, in my opinion. I think when you actually just get down to it and get nitty gritty and look at the numbers on this one, it's more of a Houston strength than it is a Pittsburgh strength. I think Houston's more balanced than this Pittsburgh team. I think Pittsburgh will lose this game and we will be easily cashing this ticket. It's my top play of the week. I love Houston here. +3 is a 2.5 unit special.
Yeah, and I think if you look at this game, if you zoom out, which I think is always an interesting point, if you look historically, Pittsburgh versus Houston, Pittsburgh should be favored by more in this game. Just historically. Historically, this should be about 6.5, 7, even on the road. So this is inherently a short line. And as Guns mentioned, this is just a Pittsburgh team that is trying to figure something out offensively. Of course, we like Kenny Pickett. I think he's got a good career in front of him, but it hasn't looked great this season. There's no way around that. And as Guns mentioned, fool's gold, beating a Raiders team that is in complete turmoil. You talk about teams that are at the real bottom level in this league right now. The Raiders and the Bears are 1-1A. And something that I heard reading some media yesterday, actually, CJ Stroud has dinners at his house with the team on a regular basis, which I think for a rookie quarterback is truly incredible leadership. And of course, D'Amico Ryans, ex-player with the Texans going back to the early 2000s, really has this group fired up and ready to go. I think the gun is on to something here. An opportunity to dominate. Next play, my official play, also bought this midweek at -3.5. Minnesota Vikings on the road, 4.5 now. Let's talk about it. As we mentioned on this show last week, we had a disagreement. The Chargers did win the game in the shark and the gun heads-up battle, but that just makes Minnesota even more of a buy team here. And we've been detailing how much we want to fade Minnesota dating back to last year, but I think you have to really zoom in on their calendar. That is more so at home. The team did run incredibly clean at home, more so on as opposed to on the road. And really zooming into where they are on this season, they are 0-3 straight up. They are 0-2-1 ATS. They did backdoor push or cover at the Birds in prime time in week 2. But this team is purely a buy unit at this point in their calendar. We talk about this as a database point within NFL ball, but buying low on a team that truly is so far below their mean is where you want to exist. And I think if you go to last year, as I mentioned, they do function well in this position. They did play a road game October 16th, 2022 at Miami, and the game was weighted very similarly. They were 3, steamed up to 4. They did win the game 24-16. They were up 24-10 in the fourth quarter. Miami got a late touchdown. They were pretty much in control of that game, and that is the corollary that I'm really centering on here. And you go to the Carolina side of this game. Mike Munoz in the chat, we appreciate you, brother, says, I know Carolina sucks, but I can't lay it with Vikings on the road. Again, I think I would bring your attention to that specific game. This portion of the country, southern portion, little warmer weather, outdoors, and the way the game is weighted is very similar to that Miami game. But let's talk about Carolina for a brief second. I think Carolina is purely fool's gold at the highest level. And it's crazy to say that because the team is 0-3. So you say, what do you mean they're fool's gold? Well, they did push their only home game, ATS, and it was pretty egregious. We were laying 3 points with the Saints in prime time week 2. Saints were in control the entire game. And the only real points that Carolina got was a final drive 6 plus 2, 8 points to push. They really weren't particularly competitive. They did take a margin loss to the Falcons, who are currently getting stomped by the Jags. If you want to use a little bit of transitive property, if you lose by 14 there, and that team is losing by 17 now, and also last week getting hammered at Seattle as well. I just don't think there's a lot of upside for Carolina this year. Obviously, rookie quarterback, trying to figure out the league. Buying a rookie quarterback, we said it going back 2 weeks, not so much buy low. It's going to be just a toil of a season for Bryce Young. And again, Minnesota's sitting here at 0-3 straight up. Justin Jefferson making some great comments in the press conferences midweek, talking about staying the course, sustainability, variance losses, and final point, 2 of those losses at home, both just complete coin flips. We love this play. Vikings should get off the schneid with some margin this afternoon. On it midweek at 3.5, that is -5 now. Staying course.
I got some comments in this one. From a Survivor perspective, I think Minnesota is probably my top play as far as picking in Survivor. When else are you going to use the Vikings the rest of the year? They're very sweaty as far as a lot of their picks are concerned. I think this is a perfect spot. This game, the line opened up at 2.5, 3 at one point early this week. And it immediately got steamed up by the Sharps. That's why you're seeing it at 5 right now. It's definitely a Minnesota line, in my opinion.
Without question. And staying course at 1 o'clock, a couple games we're not on, but we do want to talk about potentially the worst game we've seen all season this afternoon at Soldier Field, 1 o'clock, noon in Chicago. The Bears come home against the Broncos. And, you could make an argument this is relegation status for both of these teams.
Yes.
The Bears are beyond dysfunctional. I think the coach has to go. I was talking about it last Sunday. I think, obviously, Justin Fields is having a tough time. I think he's in his head. I think he's not trusting his instincts enough. But I think it's the coach's fault. I think this coach is the wrong guy. I think he's mismanaging the product and the quarterback. Broncos, coming off of just an absolute disaster, giving up 70 points last week. And I found something to be kind of comical. There was a quote and there was a scene of Mike McDaniel shaking Sean Payton's hand after the game. And the article was entitled, "What Sportsmanship Mike McDaniel Had for Not Breaking the NFL Record for Points." And I thought to myself, how is that sportsmanship to not break the record? Like, at what point did the world flip from let's compete at the highest level and be great to let's not score, let's not set the record out of respect for the mediocrity of the opponent? Like, I just don't even understand that. But
Yeah.
I'll throw it to you for some comments on this game.
Yeah, actually, Ozfellow can join us today, but this was one of the picks that he liked in this one, and I lean this way personally myself. I think this is a good overtake on this one. You see the line here at 46, 47. It looks like it's steaming up in that right direction. For some reason, when you look at these two teams, you think, what? They're not going to score points. It's going to be very low scoring. It's going to be a 13-7 type of game. Why then? If the books thought that, then why isn't the line 38 or 36 or 37? It's sitting at 46, 47 right now. I think it's telling an over story on this one, and I can't agree more with the odds fellow on this one. But it is relegation time. We need to bring up an XFL team with these two teams. I mean, they're just god awful. You have Denver just giving up 70 points to Miami last week, and then you have Chicago. You have arguably a great rushing weapon in Justin Fields, and you want to make him a pocket passer. I don't understand why. Let the guy be an athlete. Let him be a creator. And that's what he's best at doing. He did it at Ohio State, and he did it last year, and he was exciting to watch. I don't know if they're trying to save him and not get him hurt, but it is just a weird move by the Chicago Bears to really harness this talent the way they have. So, yeah, if there was a take that I have or a lean on this one, I think it's towards the total, and it's probably on the overside.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Obviously, there's some counterpoints to both sides of this game. But I do think if you look at the last time these teams played, it's fairly anecdotal. It was not the same rosters, but the last time they did play, as Guns suggested, this should be under 37.5. The game did finish 16-14 back in 2019. So from any sort of matchup analysis, roster to roster, obviously not the same players, but franchise to franchise, you would look at points here. I think the game ATS is incredibly difficult to cap. As we said, both teams are very unprofessional, and that is wild to say for a Sean Payton product, but they've looked unprofessional. There's no way around it. Getting hammered last week and giving up 70 points, but I think even more ridiculously, blowing a double-digit lead at home to the Commanders the previous week. I think that was even more unprofessional in Denver. But we've spent too much time on this game. Let's talk a little better ball. 1 o'clock, Fox Sports, Nissan Stadium, Nashville, Tennessee. I think this is going to be a really tough game to cap. Bengals come in here off the aforementioned win on Monday Night Football against the Rams, but this is where the Titans function very well as a home dog. Guns had them 2 weeks ago to cover a very similar position against the Chargers. Truthfully, I think this is really a toss line, but I'll throw it to the gun for some comments.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a toss line. This is a complete pass for me. I really don't know what the condition of Joe Burrow is. He's very robotic. He's very stiff. He's doing like 2-3 step drops, and they're doing Jamar Chase quick slants, trying to get the ball out of his hands immediately. I don't think he's 100%. He wants to play. He is a baller, but he feels like there's still something wrong with that ankle. On the Tennessee side, their offense, like I said before, how they're ranked as far as their production is concerned. A lot of concerns on this one. Derrick Henry really not running like he used to. I don't know why, if that is a mental thing or if it's just an age thing. But both sides, I don't trust their offenses, and their defenses, I think, are just middle of the road, lackluster at best. I mean, this is a complete pass. There's a reason why this line, every time you see a Tennessee line, it's always 2.5, 3. It's similar to like the Charger lines. It could be any side on this one. If someone told me they like Cincinnati or somebody told me they like Tennessee, I'd be like, yeah, okay. I mean, but it's just a pass for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just final point on this game. These teams did play last year, and probably not coincidentally, the Bengals did win the game by 4 points. So
there you go.
I mean, you guys know I generally like to fade the Titans. I kind of feel like the Titans have been just running a little too hot for years. If I had to free play this, if I was putting this in a pool or something, I would lean towards the Bengals. And I think getting the line under 3, this is probably a field goal game. You're probably looking at a hook cover there if we were going to take something at a free play. But saying at 1 o'clock, we got some divisional games to talk about. We love divisional football because we are data abundant, of course, 2 times a year, far more than any other matchup analysis. But let's talk the Saints. Saints hosting the Bucs. Saints off an excruciating loss last week. We detailed that when we talked about the Green Bay game on Thursday night. Really had no business losing that game, but I think, very symptomatic to the fact that Derek Carr did get hurt mid-game and the team just completely fell off a cliff. Now they come back, catching the Bucs. 2-1 Bucs. I think to a certain degree, fool's gold with the Bucs. Win at Minnesota in week 1. Cover against the Bears at home, barely, due to a pick 6 in the final 2 minutes. When you barely beat the Bears at home and you beat a Minnesota team that was supposed to lose, where you actually got dominated in the yardage in that game, and then you get smoked at Philly at home on Monday Night Football. Guns, I think this is a Saints look. I'll throw it to you for some comments.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. Actually, when I actually wrote this banner right here at -3.5, it's now going to -4, -4.5. So it's steaming in the direction of the Saints. With the news that Derek Carr was listed as questionable, did get hurt last week. Looks like he is going to be playing in this game. But yeah, like you said, fool's gold. And Tampa got exposed last week versus the Philadelphia Eagles. They're playing on a short week, getting handed to them. Now they're going to go play a divisional opponent on the road. I think this is more of a Saints look than anything else, especially what the Saints did last time. Listen, we had the Saints at +2, and we were lucky from a Circa standpoint because that line got steamed to -1.5. And if you had that line, you lost the bet. They were up 17-0 at one point in the game, and they gave it up. I think the Saints are going to get right in this spot. Bounce back situation, divisional opponent at home. Line functionality is leaning towards the Saints side. I lean Saints on this one. I don't think you can take Tampa. It's Saints or pass.
Completely agree. And as I'm sure people want to play this. I could make an argument. I really could for the Saints here. As we mentioned, Tampa fool's gold, and New Orleans coming home off an excruciating loss. That will be a bounce back. Carr will be angry. The team will be juiced up down there in the dome. There's no way around it. This is definitely a Saints point. And one final point on this game. This is a double revenge game from last year. They did lose twice to Tampa Bay last year. Of course, that was Tom Brady in the mix, not Baker Mayfield. And as Guns mentioned, the line is heavily on the Saints here. They were a significant underdog in the previous matchup. Books are all over the Saints here. I think you guys should probably be on the Saints here as well. Today at 1 o'clock, NFC East football, Bird Gang at home. Big time stuff here. Commanders on the road where they did beat Philadelphia last year to the surprise of most, including myself. Nonetheless, you get a Bird Gang revenge game. You get a line that's steaming heavily towards Philadelphia, and you get the Commanders off a blowout loss last week to the Bills. John's picks, opening comments.
Yeah, I mean it is a revenge spot because if you remember, that game was Monday night. It was prime time, and Philly was just on a tear, especially at home. They were dominating everybody, and they got caught sleeping versus this Commanders team, losing outright in that game. And now, I think the line functionality, I think this jumped up maybe 4 points. I can't remember. I think the line was like 6 or 5 or something last year. Now you're seeing this line hitting at 9. I think it is a Philly take on this one. I think that still stings, that loss at home, because it really hurt their streak. And it's good. I mean, divisional game, revenge. It has a lot of boxes that are checked on this one. I've not personally bet it myself, but if I would say take the Eagles in this spot. It's the perfect situational spot for Philadelphia.
Yeah, I agree. And as you mentioned last year when these teams played, I believe Philadelphia was undefeated coming into that game.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, they just were capped. It's hard to run the table in professional football, and Washington did get them with some emphasis last year. Of course, that was not Sam Howell. I believe that was, who was that? Taylor Heineke, I think, at that point.
Heineke was the quarterback, correct.
Yeah, exactly. And, of course, Sam Howell has not looked great. But I think if you want to talk about Philadelphia here briefly, Philadelphia obviously did cover week 1 at New England, but I think that they're rounding into form. And I think that they are actually a statistical buy low at home. You guys remember we actually had them against Minnesota in the primetime game in week 2, and they did melt really, really badly. 27-7 lead and did not cover the spread. Real garbage touchdown. So from a statistical standpoint at home, you do want to buy them when they are 0-1 ATS. And as we mentioned, Washington has not shown really anything impressive. They didn't cover against Arizona in week 1. Then they went on the road, as we mentioned, against Denver, really an awful Denver team, and were down huge in that game before backdooring and the chaos of the final possession, a Hail Mary and a 2-point conversion and the nonsense of it. But we said this last week when we were discussing that game. The takeaway for me when I watched Denver play Washington, college football. And that is not a compliment to professional athletes. It reminded me of a college game. No defense, really, really clustered back and forth in the game. Neither team can hold a lead, and really just a circus finish with a Hail Mary and a no call in the end zone, a 2-point conversion. But I don't think this Commanders team is even remotely solid with Sam Howell at the QB position. Not wanting to go too far into detail on this game, but I do think Philadelphia is the side, as Guns mentioned. Going to 4 o'clock, official plays recommence here on a suddenly not so casual 7-point Sunday, October 1st, 2023. Sharky Waters Nation, 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the waiver down to the water. Throw it back to the gun. Talk about the Cardinals. 3-0 ATS, all outside of the division, all against the NFC East, off a huge win against Dallas last week. San Francisco and Brock Purdy showing no signs of hesitation or let up, and an official play from the gut on this beautiful Sunday.
Yeah, this is a Circa play for me. I'm on the 49ers in this one, minus 14. Don't be scared of that number at all. It is the perfect line functionality with this one. I mean, just look at the total. It's 44. What does that tell you? It tells you basically the books are saying it's going to be a 49ers blowout, in my opinion. You know, Arizona coming off a big win, double-digit dog, beating Dallas 28-16 at home. Won outright despite losing the net yardage battle, minus 16 net yards for the game. Now, San Francisco, they're off some extra rest. They absolutely dominated the Giants 30-12 and in the net yards as well, plus 191 net yards. They played a very boring, methodical game because I think they were getting a little bit more prepped for a divisional game that was going to happen today. Now, you look at Arizona, really. Arizona, first 3 games, they had to play NFC East teams, which is, I don't know who does the scheduling, but it's remarkable that you have to play one division back to back to back like that. And they won the first half in every single one of those games. They were leading the game against Washington 13-10 at halftime, minus 54 net yards for the game was the outcome, and they lost that game. Giants, they were up 20-0 at halftime with them, plus 160 net yards at halftime, lost that game. And then you have Dallas. Of course, they won that game, 21-10 at halftime, plus 123 net yards. And there was multiple times that Dallas could have got back into that game, almost collapsed again in the second half on that one. But when you look at the second half, the numbers are insane on this one. Washington outscored them 10-3 in the second half, minus 38 net yards for the game. Then you have the Giants outscored 31-10 in the second half, minus 60 net yards for the game. That was the outcome. And of course, they beat Dallas back and forth. Dallas missed a bunch of opportunities. They only won 7. They did win that one, outscored Dallas 7-6 in the second half. But San Francisco, what are they doing? They're dominating all their competition. 399 yards. They're putting up 399 yards per game of total offense, holding their opponents to 258, 53 yards per game rushing. What is Arizona's offensive production is more predicated on whether or not they can run the ball. They average 156 yards per game on the ground, 5.6 yards per carry so far this season. San Francisco has won and covered both matchups last season, putting up 38 on both of those games, and they were a 10-point favorite and a 14-point favorite, covering both of those numbers. Now you have San Francisco 7-0 against the spread versus divisional opponents dating back to 2022, and got backdoored last week versus the Rams. If you remember that game, had that game under control, and then a late field goal for no reason to get the cover for the Rams. It was egregious. It felt like it was scripted. It felt like the books made a phone call and said, you can't go for a touchdown here, Rams. You have to go for a field goal. We need this cover bad. Then you have Arizona 1-5 against the spread versus divisional opponents since 2022. Arizona is on a little bit of an ATS hot streak too. They're 3-0 against the spread so far this season, but that is versus non-divisional opponents and the NFC East. San Francisco's coming off extra rest, well prepared for this one. I expect them to absolutely dominate and steamroll this Arizona Cardinals team. So give me the 49ers on this one, minus 14, 2-unit special.
Yeah, I couldn't talk you off that at all. Just one clarification. You said they played the Rams last week. They did play the Giants last week.
No, I mean, I meant week 2. I apologize.
Right.
That's correct.
But I do want to bring that Giants game to the forefront of the conversation because I think that's a good example of what San Francisco does to these opponents. They beat these opponents by margin. There's no way around it. And they just do it consistently. And it seems like there's no stopping. And as Guns mentioned, this Arizona team at some point is not going to cover a spread. It theoretically should come in their first divisional road game off just really a clustered heater and a huge win last week. I think the lean for me would be the Niners. I'm not on it officially. Next one, big-time football here. AT&T Stadium, Patriots, Cowboys. Cowboys, again, off the aforementioned loss last week, just really, really hard to figure out. I mean, obviously, we lost the wager, which is one thing. But to actually lose the game outright as a 13 to 14-point favorite is borderline unheard of in the NFL. That just doesn't happen. Books don't miss lines by 20 points in the NFL like that. And teams that are favored by 2 touchdowns just don't lose. The talent gap is very, very transparent in those spots. And I think if you look at what happened there, I think even more bizarrely, go to the second half in that game. We were talking about it in the group chat midweek, but Dallas had 4 separate red zone trips in the second half and only got 6 points. They had almost 300 yards in the second half alone and only got 6 points. They should have won the game. Just a couple mistakes, and it is what it is. But you get the Patriots coming in here on a road back-to-back off a big win last week, their first of the campaign in the division at the Jets. They got to go to Dallas, stay on the road. Dallas angry, Guns. The market is steaming this towards the Patriots, which is very confusing, in my opinion. Your thoughts on this one?
I mean, you made a good point about Dallas, and I understand where you're coming from. Listen, coming from that loss, non-division, a little bit angry, really fell flat on the offensive side, like you said, multiple opportunities to take over that game and win. But they're playing a New England team, maybe a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Remember, the last time these two teams met, they met in Foxborough. Crazy game. Went into overtime, backdoor cover type of situation for the Dallas Cowboys. I think both of us as a collab were on the New England Patriots, and we were just flabbergasted by the outcome in that game. I wonder if there's going to be a little bit of residuals there because a lot of the guys that are playing there for the Patriots now remember that. And also, you got to look at the fact that Diggs being out on the defensive side for the Cowboys, he didn't play last week, and that was kind of like, where are they at defensively? And you see a little bit of regression with this defense. Now, granted, I'm not saying this is going to be consistent, but I kind of want to see it. Is it going to be a pattern going forward? Or are we going to, Dallas is going to get the smell and salts and get right in this spot. But like you said, this seems like it's a steam towards the New England line. However, I don't know why it's 6 or 7. It feels like it should be a Dallas line and a Dallas take. I didn't want to play it because I felt like I don't know what side to be on in this one. I definitely no play for me. I am a fan of the Patriots, of course. I just want to watch the game and enjoy.
Yeah, no, like as I said, the steam is really confusing to me because I think that this has to be a Dallas buy spot. I think New England's in a really tough travel spot. I think they're off a situational high. I think if you look at how they function against playoff caliber teams, they have not covered. They did not cover against Philly at home. They did not really compete that well against Miami. Miami only won that game by 7 points, but that was not that close of a game. And they beat the Jets last week, and they beat the Jets because Zach Wilson really at this point in his career is not looking like a professional quarterback. So when you really go through the Patriots' schedule, this is where they theoretically are not going to perform well. And as we mentioned, Dallas off a really insulting loss should be really pissed off here. I think this could come early. I think Dallas could come out here with some authority in the first half. I did check the line. The line is minus 3.5 in the first half. Not noteworthy. Dallas is 1-0 first half at home within this division. They did hammer the Jets in week 2 early and often. I think the lead here has to be Dallas first half specifically. The market's steaming towards the Patriots. I think there's 1 point to it, which I'm not sure how much weight it holds for me. But Dallas, even though they're off a loss, they're in a pretty rough travel spot here. Obviously, did play at Arizona last week. After tonight's game, they go on the road again to the West Coast for a huge game. They have a couple big games this year. Next week is one of them. Sunday Night Football, Levi's Stadium at the Niners. So this is where it becomes a difficult game to cap because just as much as it's a bounce back, it's also a terrible sandwich spot. And I'll say it again because I'm going through my head here. At Arizona, come home against Mac Jones and the Patriots. Got to go on the road again. Biggest game of your season potentially. As I mentioned, San Francisco and Philadelphia are their biggest games of the year. And they stay on the road for 2. At San Francisco, week 5. At Chargers, week 6. This is an awful spot. It's a sandwich spot. It's a one-off at home. We talk about this in all sports. When you go road, home, back on the road, you're in a tough spot. And that's probably why the market is steaming towards New England. I do think Dallas has to come out with some sort of energy and efficiency early. But I do think New England really could hang on late and cover this spread. And that's probably why it's moving that direction. A lot of conversation for an unofficial play, but we're looking at.
I know. Did we just say Dallas first half and Patriots game? Is that what we just came up with?
I think so. And of course, conversation wins. We love to discuss it and we love to interact with you guys. Please interact in the chat. We see our guys in the chat. Jabaka, what's going on? Christopher Borcher. This show makes my Sunday morning. We love to do it, and that is no exaggeration. Other guys in the chat, please drop your comments, your plays, and we will talk about 2 more games here on this beautiful Sunday. 4:05 p.m., SoFi Stadium. Chargers come home against the Raiders. Chargers continuously and probably for the rest of the duration of Justin Herbert's career are going to be right on the number. We've talked about this now for close to 2 seasons. -6.5 guns. Are they going to win the game exactly by 7 points?
Yes. And this is the line. I thought like the books, they just give out -3 with the Chargers every week, and now you see it at -6.5. Reason why it is -6.5 is Jimmy G is not going to be playing this game. Of course, Aiden O'Connell is going to play. If you don't know who Aiden O'Connell is, let me tell you who he is. He was a Purdue quarterback, spread offense, a terrific passer, big numbers with Purdue. I don't know if he beat Drew Brees' records or anything like that. I have to look that up myself, but I remember he was putting up some really big numbers there with the Boilermakers. But to me, I have no interest whatsoever to mess with the Chargers anymore. I never know if they're going to show up one day or the other. I feel like this is going to be a very public play to take the Chargers on this one. However, with the situation going on with the Raiders coming off a loss on Monday Night Football, short week versus the Steelers, and I don't want anything to do with this, especially a divisional game. This is just a complete and utter pass for me. Could be a gross game.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I would lean towards the Chargers, but I think it's going to be crazy sharp. And, One thing about the Raiders, we talked about the Bears and the Raiders, just turmoil. And I think Josh McDaniels is just not a great leader of men. And, it's never a shot on these guys. We're just purely analyzing skill and merit. I just don't think he has a voice. I don't think he's that guy. And I think, Guns knows this very well as a Patriots fan. Patriots coordinators, when they go outside of the Belichick locker room, have not succeeded. I mean, barely any of them. Mike Vrabel being really an outlier to it. But I think even Mike Vrabel maybe not being the same situation. Ex-player, not ex-assistant. And I think that really is a thing. And it's just human psychology. Some people are good as the second layer of leadership, not the top layer of leadership. You've seen it across the board, and Josh McDaniels really is a great example here. His second head coaching stint, both in the AFC West, both very unsuccessful. And I think what you're seeing this week, the player mismanagement with Chandler Jones, kicking this guy off the roster, putting him in some sort of mental institute, guy gets arrested, just insanity, total distraction. And as you said, Aiden O'Connell out of Purdue, making his first career start, a lot of moving parts, tough to cap, free play, office pool. We would lean towards the Chargers. Taking a breath, 50 minutes in. Late night football, 8:20 p.m. I will be watching this game, beer in hand, excited to talk about it. Chiefs at Jets. I think anytime the Chiefs come to New York City, a lot going on, and I think more going on in recent times with obviously Travis Kelce now dating Taylor Swift. Paparazzi all over both of them. And maybe a distraction, maybe not, but I'll throw it to the gun for some comments.
I feel bad for the NFL because when they set the schedule up, this was supposed to be Aaron Rodgers versus Pat Mahomes. This wasn't supposed to be, Zach Wilson sitting in this spot. There is some weird locker room animosity. It seems like everything that I'm reading with the Jets. I mean, they really do not like Zach Wilson at all. They don't believe in him. There's a lot of pushback coming from Salah. In his I guess his stubbornness to stick with Zach Wilson. I'm not sure why he still does it. But he is, and he's creating some friction in the locker room. I would not put any bets on the Jets moving forward unless you start seeing something from them. When Kansas City plays on the road, they play their best ball, they score the most points. They are flat at home, but when it comes to the road, they're just a different animal. We've seen these situations in prime time with Kansas City. Of course, they want to show out because the last time they were in prime time on Thursday Night Football against the Detroit Lions, they did not show out. I think in this position, I'd probably lean towards the Kansas City side, but this is a game that really we're going to go to bed early tonight, folks, and have a nice little rest because this game is unwatchable, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think, again, the paparazzi aspect is probably the most interesting part of this game. Taylor Swift should be there. Mahomes' wife was apparently hanging out with her and Blake Lively last night in New York City. I felt like the Shark and the Gun should have been there having some cocktails with this great crew in New York.
I got a prop bet on that one. Over Taylor Swift mentions in that game. Take the over.
What are we looking at?
I would say 10.5. What do you think? Yeah, I don't know. I'm just making it up here. It's gonna go well over. They're gonna show her in the booth, hanging out with Travis Kelce's mom, and her cussing in the booth or whatever. Everybody getting all nuts about that one. It's pretty hilarious. Yeah, it's just gonna be a circus in this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think in terms of ATS capping this game, as you mentioned, it's gonna be tough. Kansas City has performed well as a road favorite. I do think if you go back to last year, maybe not this spot. It was mostly at the NFC last year. We have detailed this numerous times at the Cardinals, at the Niners, at the Bucks. This Jet spot for them really is just a one-off. Not a lot of matchup data, just kind of a random game more or less. But I do think some merit to the Jets. Jets defense is incredible. There's no way around it. And they're going to perform well at home. That's why the line is so low at 41.5. But you're looking at a KC team that put up over 40 points last week at home against the Bears. I think this is a situational reversal and a quality reversal from a defensive perspective. I honestly think the Jets could keep this close. I think the narrative that Zach Wilson is terrible has some merit behind it, but I do think if you go back through the games he has played, he lost at home last year to New England. He lost this year to New England. So did anything really change? No. They beat Buffalo at home. They beat Buffalo last year. Did anything really change? No. So if you go through last year and you look at the home schedule, Wilson did replace Flacco in week 4. This team has been pretty good at home. Blew out Miami last year, 40-17. Again, lost to New England, beat Buffalo at home. That's 2 years in a row. Hammered Chicago by 21. Lost by 3 points to Detroit. I mean, at that point in time, people didn't know how good Detroit was. I mean, let's analyze right now. If we told you right now on October 1st, 2023, that Zach Wilson and the Jets only lost by 3 points to the Lions, we would actually say that's a representative effort from the Jets. So they've been pretty solid in this spot. The only margin loss they did take was against Jacksonville last year. But I think potentially some reasoning behind that. That was a home sequence off of the cover against Detroit, and it was a short week. That was Thursday Night Football on 12/22. They had played that tight game against Detroit only 3 or 4 days before on Sunday, 12/18. So that's tough to back up a real tight one against Detroit only 4 days later against Jacksonville. I think that makes sense. talking a game out here, but I do think I lean towards the Jets in this game. And one final play, 55 minutes in. Guns picks an official, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, Monday Night Football, same stadium. We get 2 games at MetLife this week in East Rutherford. This should be a really interesting game. Seahawks at Giants, revenge game from last year. Giants did take a margin loss in the Pacific Northwest in the middle of last year. That was a tough spot for the Giants last year. This appears to be a better spot for the Giants, and it is the final official of this Week 4 broadcast from the Gun.
Yeah, I took it in the Circa contest. I got it at a pick in the Circa, but you got it at 1.5 right now. I still like the Giants on this one. I think it's a good Giants spot. Coming off a tough loss on Thursday Night Football versus San Francisco 30-12, putting up 150 yards total offense, minus 291 net yards for the game. Then you got Seattle coming off a nice little home win. However, it was against the Carolina Panthers. As we already discussed, Carolina Panthers not a good team at all. They only had a plus 45 net yards in that game against Andy Dalton. Okay. The perception really from everybody, I would say the public perception really is the Giants are just a bad football team. But I feel like that perception is a little bit misleading when you actually look at the schedule. They had to face their divisional rival versus Dallas, a team that typically owns them. So, just like we said with New England and the Jets, it's always the same story, the same pattern. Just like, so Dallas always owns the Giants. Then they go into week 2, and then they have to face the Arizona Cardinals. Down 20-0, made the comeback in the second half and won that football game. And then they had to play the 49ers on Thursday night. Now, 49ers, we've already discussed, arguably the best team in football. So they've had a really, really tough schedule to start the season. So a lot of the perception really is not that they're bad. It's just they're playing teams way above their pay grade. But in this situation, I think that the water kind of levels out for them. Now, you look at the other side with Seattle, divisional foe, the Rams, a team that they own, 130-13 minus 46 net yards. It was a double revenge spot for the Rams. So losing that game, they're 1-9 against the spread against Seattle. So that Seattle was supposed to lose that game because that's the pattern. Then you got the win over the Detroit, which is virtually identical mirror game of last season. Close game, ton of points. Of course, Seattle victors again on the road, got it done. And then they had a win over Carolina. Like I said, arguably one of the worst teams in the NFL. The weakness in Seattle is their pass defense, okay? Getting up 328 yards per game passing, 65.6 pass completion rate to their opponents. Then you have New England. The Giants typically perform well outside of the division. They're actually 10-4 against the spread versus non-divisional opponents. Seattle also dealing with a lot of injuries on the offensive line. Their left tackle crosses out. Their center probably not gonna be playing this one, so they already have weak holes in the offense. Granted, the Giants don't have Saquon Barkley. He's listed as out. That's why the line moved up a point and a half. But I still think it's going to be a Giants line. They're going to have to pass a little bit more. And I think Daniel Jones against a weak pass defense will get it done here on Monday Night Football with tons of rest, virtually a bye week, not playing since Thursday. So that's why I like the Giants in this one. Short line. Give me the Giants here, plus 1.5 to you special.
Yeah, no, I want to go into more detail tomorrow, but I do lean towards the Giants as well. And as you mentioned, I think the Giants just playing a really difficult schedule so far. And I think that's the crucial point when you're analyzing this 1 and 2 3-game sample. As Guns mentioned, got hammered at home against Dallas. Dallas is one of the best teams in the sport, and got hammered against the Niners on the road. Also one of the best teams in the sport. In between, did beat the Cardinals, but that was an absolute just trap sandwich spot. Off Dallas, short week, looking ahead to Thursday Night Football, back-to-back road in the western portion of the country. Just a brutal spot. And they came out flat, and they showed what they could do in the second half. And as you mentioned, Seattle, probably just a tough spot here to buy on East Coast time on a short line. I'm going to handicap it further, but I do think the Giants are the spot there. Taking a breath as we wrap up the show. 3 top plays from the Shark, 5 from the Gun on this beautiful Sunday morning, October the 1st, 2023. It is Circa Millions, the show, the Shark and the Gun on Sharky Waters Nation. LA Rams on the road, +1. Bounce back last week, not indicative of anything other than the fact the Bengals are a Super Bowl caliber team who had to win last week. This is the opposite. This is an Indianapolis team that is way too hot off a huge road win. This should come the other direction today on the Rams at 1 o'clock. Minnesota 0-3. This is a bye spot. Carolina very fortunate to push their only home game, a late 2-point conversion. Minnesota should take care of business today at -3.5 midweek, which is why you guys follow midweek to get the lines. We get ourselves -5 now, and a collaboration play. Baltimore +3. Heavy steam across. That's also why we played it midweek. This is going to be potentially a margin win on the road for Baltimore against now Dorian Thompson-Robinson, making his first career start in replace of Deshaun Watson. The gun 5 top plays. Buffalo at home, Orchard Park, -2.5. Baltimore collaboration. Houston +3, fading the Steelers in a tough travel back-to-back road off a win. San Francisco -14, fading the 3-0 ATS Cardinals, and the Giants +1.5 on Monday Night Football. 1 hour in the books, 7-point Sunday. Sundays are for the Sharps. We appreciate you guys immensely. Have a beautiful Sunday. We will be on here tomorrow talking about Monday Night Football. Guns drop the official. I might give some commentary towards it. Guns picks, a pleasure as always. Close them out with some words, and let's dominate.
Yeah, 40 to 50, you beautiful bastards. Watch us live here on a Sunday, taking time out for the effort to see the sharpest information on the planet. Please like and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so you know every time we go live. But that's going to do it here for the Circa Million show. Appreciate everybody in the chat for joining us and giving information as well as we do the show. Let's dominate the board, baby. Let's cash tickets like we did in college football. Let's carry that over to Sunday. Let's dominate. And as always, let's keep dancing. Bang.